Chairman, and just first and foremost, I apologise. I might be asking some questions asked already because I had other commitments before lunch, so I could be repeating what I said already. So I just want to ask a few questions to Mr. Reid about thalidomide and the numbers. And there's a lot of disquiet still about the numbers. And here, are they people being excluded that should be included in this claims and these claims and people that were affected by this back in the 60s? Are there some people outside that are not in this list? You gave me here personal injury litigation initiated 23, payments accepted 6, and number of litigations in this cohort 17, and personal injury litigation initiated is 10. Them figures. Are there some people outside that's not included in this table?
There are some thalidomide sufferers who haven't taken any proceedings against the state.
And do you know the number?
I don't have it offhand, no. What I was giving you are the numbers that we're engaged with, because our engagement is with people who've sued.
Okay. And do you think there's many more out there, or more, or 3 times that, or 2 times that, or do you reckon there's more people out there? Because we're getting as public representatives that there are people out there very disquiet over not being included, and they haven't come forward. Is that what you're saying? They haven't come forward yet, or they're being excluded by the state?
No, they haven't been excluded, Deputy. They just haven't taken proceedings.
Okay, the proceedings haven't been initiated.
Deputy, just to, say, to confirm that actually there are 30 people recognised as having thalidomide, and they are in receipt.
Is that outside of this what we have here, this figure here?
So what you have there is 23 that are taking cases. There are 6 recipients who are in receipt of payments through the Department of Health, and there is 1 person who hasn't accepted the payments from the department, and then the unacknowledged are people who have not had a causation linked to thalidomide. So the department has, in fact, in the last number of years, paid for a number of people who, back in 1975, went through the thalidomide board and they didn't meet the criteria. And then in about 2013, the department paid for them to go to Sweden to be assessed, and they didn't meet the criteria there. So the ones that are acknowledged is a group of 30.
Why haven't these people that are outside that are not included here, why haven't they come forward? I mean, this is, you're not talking about yesterday, we're talking about 1975, well, and this is 2000.
It's not that they haven't come forward, it's that they haven't been able to link their disability with having taken...
so it's ongoing, this is ongoing then. This could go on for another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Well, in fact, you know, it's open to anybody to present in Sweden and be assessed. And where the link is made to the drug, the department has made payments, and the Continent Foundation makes payments, and then the department has provided supports as well.
So have these 30 people gone to get the test carried out?
These 30 people have been assessed as children and have been in receipt of payments since 1975, and then 6 of them took the payment of 62,500 in 2013 before the
Can I ask how the payment of 62,500 reached? Is that a general thing, or how was that decided at 62,500? And is that what's being offered to each claimant individually as they come before you?
In 2010, the state publicly stated that they wanted to support the people who were survivors of thalidomide, and at that stage the state said that they wanted to look after the health needs of the individuals. So similar to in other countries, it was recognised that as people aged, they incurred further disabilities. So the state at that stage decided that they wanted to support them further, so they have a medical card without being means tested, and if they have requirements for further like adaptations or environmental controls to assist them to live independently, the department fully supports that and we pay for that. So since between 2013 and 18, we've paid about 139,000 to individuals to support them to have adaptations.
Why are there so many people that disquieted? Is the strong arm of the state being used to exclude people, or why are people so annoyed that they're not getting being recognised? What's the reasons for that? I
have no idea. All I can say is that the state pays pensions to people between 6,000 and 13,000, depending on their level of disability, and that's not. That is disregarded if somebody is going for a disability allowance. It's disregarded for taxation, and then the German payments equally are disregarded. So the state is attempting to support people.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about the
But
German.
we've no role in whether somebody then applies.
Deb, how many people went to the thalidomide board who felt they had the case and went to Sweden and weren't accepted? The people out there that maybe you would think have thalidomide, how many didn't come through the medical assessment as being defined as?
My understanding was that about 100 went through the assessment process in the early 1970s, and 34 were determined to have fit the criteria that was established.
So 2/3 didn't. And how many of those went to Sweden in more recent years for that international assessment?
My understanding is that 6.
Only 6 of the other 60 went.
My understanding
So it's
is
one.
that what
So
it is. But it's open to anybody.
Okay, this is probably a
my
medical thing. Just for people's benefit, obviously the 66 people who went to the thalidomide board who must have felt they had a case but wasn't defined as a case, what kind of issues were there that people felt it was thalidomide and the board said no?
It was a medical board.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm just saying, did people have some other disability that they just said maybe it's thalidomide, or can anyone give us any concept of who the other 64 people who felt they had thalidomide? Because there are probably some people that we feel
Where are their claims now?
we're probably running into some of those 64 people who feel they have thalidomide. The state is doing nothing for us. Now, they obviously didn't pass the medical test. So what kind of a category or group of people are these 64 that didn't pass the test? Has anyone any idea? Or can somebody get us a feel?
I have no idea. I mean, I know that the thalidomide board that was set up then was a professional board with medics, and they looked at the injuries and they looked at the records. So that was completely independent.
Just to be helpful,
and
maybe another way of just refining that question. How many of the 30 acknowledged and getting payments and the one who declines the payments approved in 1975 would pass the Swedish test?
All of them.
Well, is it the same test?
So,
it's just an anecdote. This could be totally wrong, but around the bushfire, there's a rumour, or it is suggested, albeit unfounded, that depending on what side of the socio-economic fence you were coming from in 1975, you got into the 34, and if you weren't if you were less likely to be troublesome, like you weren't a barrister's son or first cousin, that you were excluded. I know that sounds totally unscientific, and indeed it is, but that, right or wrong, is the perception of some people.
But those 64 people are out there still who feel they were thalidomide victims.
Yeah, and there are 9 unacknowledged who received no benefits, and it was alluded to earlier on today that there was some sort of a process to them, and there's not. They get nothing from anybody.
Anyone can tell us, because there's not a lot of people, but we've all probably bumped into a few of them in our time, and they feel they're getting no support, but they didn't meet the medical board's criteria. We accept that. So, what group of people? Has anyone any assistance to explain it? They obviously all got letters back saying they went through this and explaining you didn't meet the criteria at the end of it, but.
Well, there has to be a causation link to thalidomide. So if they weren't able to prove a causation link, then I assume that's why you didn't meet the criteria.
Yeah. I just wonder, is the test the same?
Pardon?
I just wonder, is the assessment criteria in 1975 equal to that of today, or is it different?
You had to go through the records and give us some note on what type, on this issue, because there are those people out there, those 64 people.
Well, they feel that people behind.
In fairness, there's 9 in particular.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't
listed
know.
As the unacknowledged, who don't get any support, no medical care, no nothing. There's no
but
pathway
it's open
for them.
At any stage to go to Sweden and be assessed.
Pardon? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just
and
that
the department has paid for a number of people to go through
you
that
said
process.
6 went.
6 up to
Yeah, but of the 64, people just give up when they go to a board and they give up. Just because they didn't go to Sweden doesn't mean.
Well, these 9 people in particular, did they go to Sweden to be assessed?
I don't know
We
who
wouldn't
you're
know
talking
the name.
I
about.
wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know the name. I haven't the names either. Sorry. I'm just staying 9 that Deputy Vaxelli said.
So when you say causation, so people's understanding, does that mean you have to prove the mother took the thalidomide? Is that what you mean? What does that mean? In other words, what we're here today is you've used the word causation. What does that mean in the people who are watching it? What does that mean?
Well, if you're a thalidomide survivor, it is that the mother ingested the drug at the time.
Yeah, so the causation, you have to have a disability and you have to prove the mother
Took
took the
thalidomide.
That's what you mean by causation.
Yes.
So some people could have had a disability, the mother never took thalidomide, is what you're saying,
Yes.
and they just presumed this has got to do, and then
It's thalidomide,
they
yeah.
found out the mother actually didn't take thalidomide. The disability is unconnected to thalidomide. I'm trying to
Yeah.
get it in layman's English out there, because
Right.
we do meet people that, you can meet two people, and from visual appearance you think they're thalidomide, but then you're saying maybe they're not actually, even though they look like it.
Yes, I mean, there's a number of reasons people are born with different birth defects
All the
Yeah,
costs,
different defects. Yeah.
is all
yeah.
the costs carried by the state?
in relation to...
In anyone that's found suffering, or are the company that provided this, are they liable for some of the costs? In Germany, the Germany company that's named.
Yes, for the acknowledged cases, the German Foundation pays them a pension, and then we pay
Pension.
another pension on top of
And
it.
is that a lifetime pension?
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's good to hear that. Anyway. All right.
No, but it's an issue that's an old issue out there that surfaces every so often. That's why we're having a very, I call it discussion at a simple level about it, because that's where people come to you, I have thalidomide and I got nothing, and maybe we can explain it a bit better now,
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I want to continue. The outsourcing, the laboratory testing, and all the controversy about. I just want to ask, have we got value for money? Have we proven now, especially with what's after happening and the outcry over, where we did outsource laboratory testing to America, etc. Have we got had the service being available either locally in Ireland here or in our neighbours across the water in England, that we had to go to America? Have we done comparisons with laboratory testing, and why did we go to America instead of staying home with this? Could you tell me any cost basis analysis done on why we outsourced it, particularly to America? Has that been carried out, and are we getting value for money? Sorry, directed the wrong way. And has that been carried out, the analysis? And could we have done this at home in Ireland here? Like I'm being told, we could have, say, a laboratory in Cork could have done a lot of the testing.
Discussed this, I think, at previous committees, Deputy, in terms of the historical decision to outsource at the time and whether the capacity was in the country or not. And I suppose that's been debated, and that decision was made many years ago. I guess in terms of value, what we're trying to look at now as a result of the new opportunity with HPV is to look at how we balance that private-public mix. I think we do need to be careful in terms of it isn't unique to a country as such. So in other words, we have some of the capacity here in Dublin in a private company, some in a public, some in an American laboratory, and some in a UK laboratory. So the key thing is that they meet the standards and the assurance. We would have referred earlier to just there are some opportunities with the new contracting arrangements, and you'll appreciate I can't go into that today as we're trying to finalise those contracts to just balance that between the public system and the private system going forward. The laboratories, I suppose, that we use are all, big international laboratories, or part of an international group. So we are certainly, one of our objectives going forward is just to try and balance that public and private piece as we move forward, A, with the current contracts, and B, in relation to HPV testing, which again we would have discussed earlier in terms of there would be an opportunity with that test as well to look at how we balance that.
Would we have the capability here in-house, we say in Ireland, would we have the capability here to carry out the screening and do it to the standard that you're speaking?
Yeah, it's a significant...
Would we have the capabilities here in Ireland? Are the laboratories here to do that?
Yeah, so no, it's a significant challenge. The only laboratory at the moment that's working on that is the COOM, who we're working with in terms of trying to develop their capacity, but we will have a combination of public and private. At the moment, the COOM only do about 9%. One of the issues I was identifying is that cytology, which is the sort of professional that does the screen at the moment, is effectively starting to reduce as a profession, because as you move to HPV testing you need less of that. So every country in the world is struggling with this at the moment. We've talked to Northern Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, England, and the team even went to Holland to look at their HPV testing, implementation, and there's real challenges for people in the older system, because obviously if you're going to need 80% less of that resource down the line, professionally people are looking to move. So I think it would take some time. I do think we can grow the capacity here in Ireland, and that's one of our objectives, but I think we need to be careful in the sense that we will also still need the private sectors to support us as well, and particularly with the increased demand in the programme. And I suppose our priority is to make sure we sustain the programme and try and achieve that alongside it.
Now, what lessons have we learned over the outfall over the whole thing? What lessons and what assurance have we that this won't happen again? And, you know, have we learned, and is it foolproof now, the system that we're going to use, and the system going into the future? Is it foolproof, and have we learned the lessons, and that we won't have this outcry in another couple of years' time, or something else?
So there are
It's a hard question to answer, but
there are a lot of lessons, I think it's fair to say, from the cervical check crisis, from a whole range of perspectives, in terms of patients, in terms of laboratories, in terms of governance, etc. I suppose the one thing we do have is Dr. Scally's report has set out 50 recommendations for improvement. It's critical that we move on and push on and implement those as quickly as possible. I'm not sure, Deputy, you may have been out of the room, but when we were talking earlier about the implementation, I won't go back over, but apologies, but there is a significant resource being assigned to oversee and ensure we move some of those recommendations forward. And I was also mentioning that even during Dr. Scally's investigation, it became clear to us there were certain things we could tackle very early, and we've tried to move on some of those as well. Having said that, his report is very extensive. There are some very small specific things that we need to do and do quickly, and there are others that are much broader that will happen over a period of time as well.
Okay. Yeah, I hope we learned our lessons. I mean, that we will. I just want to move on to potential liability here. On the 31st December, on the Controller General's report, where there's an estimated liability of 2.2 billion. Is that a recommendation? Is that just an estimate? What does estimate mean of claimants? And is this? I just want to ask this. Maybe I should know this. Is this taxpayers' money that we're paying 2.2 billion? Are there any insurance there to cover liabilities on claims, or is this all taxpayers' money that we're paying out of the system?
It's a pay-as-you-go scheme. Yeah.
So it's taxpayers' money?
Yes.
There's no insurance on here that ever covered that like that. I was thinking there wouldn't. I just want to clear that. That's all. And the estimate of 2.2 million at the 31st of December, why is it an estimate? Is that what you think it's going to cost, or why you use the word estimate that you don't actually know?
The reason we do that is when we get in a claim, and as the claim begins to go through its life cycle from, you know, when we begin to know more about it and begin to get more medical evidence about it and whatever, one of our skills, hopefully we have, is that we're able to put a value on the case and say, in our view, the case in terms of damages is going to cost X. And then we'll say, and costs will be plus Y. And then the estimated liability is therefore the X and Y multiplied by the number of cases where we believe they'll settle within that range.
And internationally, how would we compare? We say, are we above average, below average? Would we say internationally on claimants, or would this be the norm in every country? Say in the Western world, are we higher or lower? How do we compare with our counterparts in Europe even?
Well, the Personal Injuries Commission have just issued their report, and for example, in relation to whiplash, they indicated that we're 4.4 times the level of damages.
I was actually going to mention that with whiplash. Compared with the United Kingdom, exactly. I think I saw money where 4,500 or something is the average payment, where here we're talking about 18 to 22. I could be wrong on my figures, but something on that line.
No, they're right.
And why are we giving 4 times the compensation for whiplash compared to our neighbours across the water in the UK?
The Personal Injuries Commission tried to look at that and see, you know, why that was, and one of the reasons I think was that doctors assess it differently. So you could have a doctor looking at a soft tissue injury saying that it's severe. You could have another doctor looking at it from the defendant's side and say it's, you know, mild or moderate. And ultimately judges set the standard in terms of damages, and you know, it's what awards are. And then people
Why would we set it 4 times, 400% more than our neighbours? I mean, that's, are we a generous nation someday? We weigh money at labour.
We seem to be.
And shouldn't that be looked at? And if it means legislation, this house here, that's what we should be doing. I mean, you know, why should we be 400% higher than our neighbours? And, you know, on the same kind of claims?
Yes.
And I think it should be looked at. What's your advice on that?
Well, the Cost of Insurance Working Group, which is chaired by Minister Darcy, is going through various modules looking at different aspects of all of this, to include, for example, damages and damages awards. And they're going to look at the whole area of, damages and how damages are assessed, and whether, for example, there are opportunities to have, for example, judges set, effectively a book of quantum, so that people would understand what the different injuries are and what the level of damages that such injuries might attract. But the complexity comes in that, of course, one injury might affect one man in a particular way and another man in a different way, less or more, depending.
And dare I ask, would they have essentially them false claims? We always have that false claims, and people use the system to get money. Have we any idea genuine claims and false claims, or is that speculation?
Yeah, no, we don't. Generally, we don't, come across a fraud or anything like that. But we have had some Section 26 applications, which is where, someone grossly exaggerates their injuries, and I can think. Pardon?
By the legal profession, grossly exaggerate.
Yeah. But an example we had was about somebody who indicated they were very badly injured, and yet our evidence, which was obtained, showed that they weren't, and it's open to a judge to dismiss a case if that happens.
Okay. And 2.2 billion. I asked you, how does that compare with other countries? Are we on average with them, or are we below, or are we above? If you're talking about 400% for whiplash, we must be way above what the average would be in other countries per capita.
Yeah, on the catastrophic injury side, if we compare ourselves with the UK, in fact, they're paying more at the upper catastrophic injuries level than we are here. But there are, of course, shades between, obviously cases that aren't as severe as that. So there's a wide range, Deputy, between, say, whiplash and catastrophic injuries. But the more serious catastrophic injury cases, we are comparable with, but probably less than the UK.
And what would the estimate we say now in December? That was on an estimate on 31st December 2016. What the estimate would be to 31st December 2018? Would it be gone up to, or liabilities to 3 billion, 4 billion?
Yeah, it's broken down as follows, Deputy. And on the general indemnity scheme, which is non-clinical negligence, it's 0.81 billion. For the clinical indemnity scheme, it's 2.39 billion, which gives you a total of 3.2 billion.
Okay. And I see, just following on from that, I see that given that 98% of clinical claims are resolved through negotiation, settlements or mediation without recourse to the courts, why are then associated legal costs per claim 5 times greater than those for general claims? I just lead on to that. Why 5 times greater than for the general claim?
This was a question that Deputy Cullinan asked this morning.
Sorry, I'm repeating. Probably.
Yeah, no, and I indicated to Deputy Cullinan that these cases tend to be more complex, more time spent on them, more evaluation of experts, and plaintiffs' lawyers would argue kind of a very distinct expertise and set of skills that lawyers have for that, and therefore they charge more. So litigation costs a lot, doesn't it? I see here 27 million a saving on 284 bills of costs received from third parties for 27 million, and then a saving of 45% on the 49 million claimed. That was an extraordinary result achieved. I mean, could that be more enhanced? Well, we do our very best all the time, and ultimately it's up to the parties. If they want to tax it, they have the taxation system available to them. Yeah, I think that's all I have to ask.
Because we'll move on because